So we're going to get started. Does anybody have anything you're excited to learn about today in particular? I'll give you a couple of feelers. It could be job ads. It could be the KPIs of recruiting. It could be just the scalability of recruiting in general. Anything jumping out at you guys that you're excited for? Because I'm excited for all of it. So I'm the wrong person to ask. Hi, Jane. Welcome. I'm so glad you could make it. All right, so we are going to get started. This is going forward without me, so just ignore that. Haley's excited for all of it. That's awesome. Well, this is me and my beautiful family. I am the founder and CEO of CareWork. I am a home care hiring expert. That is all that I do. Not all. That's all that I do for work. That's all that I do in my office. That's all that my team does. We do hiring for home care agencies. We do it 7 days a week. And we have worked with agencies all across the country. So any hiring difficulties that you are facing, we can help you with, because like I said, we work with agencies across the US right now. So there's pretty much nothing you could throw at us that we haven't worked through with another agency. I also have a master's in science and biomedical science. So you will see that everything CareWork does is super data-based. Everything is an experiment we want to measure. I'm also an Army wife and a mom of 2. You can see my 2 beautiful kids right there. They've grown a little bit since this picture, but they are adorable. So what does CareWork do? Well, like I said, we're the home care hiring experts. We've been doing this for over 5 years, and we currently have about 40 part-time employees across the US that do recruiting every day for home care agencies. And this slide is even outdated. It says we've processed more than 140,000 applicants. We are far beyond that now, and growing literally every day. So with every single one of those applicants, those are phone calls we've made, texts we've sent. I could tell you for every single one of that, now probably 200,000 applicants, what happened with them. When did they apply? Did they book an interview? Did they show up? Were they hired? I have that data for now about 200,000 applicants. So when I say I believe in data and then I know how to build a scalable recruiting process, I know what I'm talking about. We have a lot of experience that I'm excited to share with you. We do work as the recruiting team for our clients. We work on these platforms 7 days a week. So Indeed, My CNA Jobs, Care is One, Care at Home, many others. We work every single day contacting these applicants. So here's what we're going to talk about today. 3 basic things. Now, I always say I could talk about recruiting all day, but I will try not to. But we're going to talk about the basics. Then we're going to talk about how to have a scalable hiring process. And last, how to have scalable retention. I absolutely believe that your agency can succeed. And I know that it's possible because we're seeing it in agencies all over the US that they are getting phenomenal results. They are growing. They are hiring the caregivers that they want to hire. So I know that the past few years, we've all gotten very burnt out, and recruiting is hard and hiring is hard and there's a shortage. All of those things are true. Believe me, nobody knows better than I do what the last few years have been like for hiring caregivers. But I also know that it is very possible. And I'm here today to give you some of the foundations of how to succeed. So when we have clients at CareWork that are hiring 60 caregivers a month, how are we getting them those results, right? That is a scalable recruiting process. We work with agencies that are brand new. We work with agencies that are doing over 10 million a year in revenue. The process for the tiny agency, brand new, no clients, and the $10 million a year agency, pretty much the same. It's just a question of volume. So there is not some huge secret out there that you don't unlock until you hit a certain level of growth. It's the opposite. You don't hit that level of growth until you figure out your recruiting process and your retention process. So that's what we're going to do today. I would love to continue working with you more in depth, and I am going to share a little bit about that at the end. So if you're going through this webinar, you're like, this is amazing, and I need more of this, and I need her to look at my Indeed account, and I need her to look at my team, and I need her to tell me what to do. Don't worry, we have options for that. But today we're going to go through some really detailed information. So first thing I'm going to do is I am going to drop that workbook in the chat, and I will do that right now. And what I want you guys to do is I want you to download that. And hold on one second, it's stuck in my PowerPoint. I want you to download that PDF because we are going to do a couple little workshop moments today. And I want you to actually participate. That is my first challenge to you, is do not just see it. And you know, sometimes when somebody's like, all right, kids, what's the answer? And then there's like a quiet moment where at home the kids should be shouting out the answer and you just wait for that quiet moment to be over. I don't want you to do that. When we do these workshop moments and we're asking like, okay, how's it going? I want you guys to actually do the work and show how it's going, you know, actually do the workshop. So go ahead. I just dropped that PDF in the chat. Let me know if everybody can see it. Anybody want to answer and let me know? Yes. Yes, we can see it. Haley can see it. Jessica can see it. Awesome. I want you guys to open that up. You don't need to go through all of it right now. We will get to it and I will tell you when to go to each page. Sue can see it. Awesome. Melissa can see it. Great. I'm so glad you guys are not having technical difficulties because I have continuous technical difficulties. Let's see. We have somebody with their hand raised. Danielle, do you want to go ahead and drop whatever question you have? I see your raised hand. You can put it in the chat right now, or we do have a Q&A function as well. I'm going to lower your hand so you can put it in the chat. Or the Q&A. We have an official Q&A up there as well. All right, let's go ahead and start talking about the basics of recruiting. So here's our goal. We want to measure and improve every step of the hiring process so that you can hire more caregivers and grow your business. Now, the fundamental belief here is that this is possible. So I'm going to come back to that again and again, because I know there are people on here today that are burnt out and think that it's not possible. They're not out there. They don't want to work in home care. They're not going to stick around. And I want to keep reinforcing to you, it is possible. I do work with agencies that are getting great results. And the way to get there is to break it down into all these little pieces, right? That's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down step by step and help you scale your agency. And here's the foundation of how we do that. At CareWork, we have what we call a caregiver first philosophy. This means we're going to prioritize the caregiver's needs and improve their experience at every step of building a caregiver first hiring process. The reason for this is that we've gotten jaded as an industry and we have some outdated mindsets still happening. And when you have an outdated mindset, it sounds like, well, if they don't want to fill out the application, they're probably not a hire that I wanted anyways. And we want to break that old mindset because it is the caregiver's responsibility to get a job to pay their bills. It is not their responsibility to staff your agency. It is your responsibility to make sure that the job that they get is with you. So throughout the hiring process, we're going to reframe that to say it's not the caregiver's responsibility to make sure your agency is staffed. If they go somewhere else because they got a job faster or because the job pays better or because it has the hours they want, that is entirely fair because we know most caregivers are living paycheck to paycheck, often under great financial stress. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that. You can say in the chat, yes, if you have. You don't have to, but I'll tell you, I have experienced times of great financial stress. And in those times, the difference of getting a job that you can work right now, get started right away, or a job that you can maybe start next week is a really big difference. Haley said, as a military spouse, yes, many military spouses live under a great deal of financial stress as well. So what we want to do throughout the whole hiring process is we're going to take that judgment-free. We are not going to talk down about caregivers. We're not going to say, well, they're just chasing the higher pay or they're just going to the first job that picks up the phone. We're going to reframe that to say it is their responsibility to pay their bills and to meet the needs of their family. It is our responsibility to make it our agency that helps them do that. And that is why we build a caregiver first hiring process. So go ahead and open up your workbook, I'm going to open up mine as well. We're going to do the first little workshop, and this is a caregiver first versus agency first assessment. So I have it open here on the PowerPoint, and you can follow along on your sheet. What we find is a lot of agencies don't realize they have an agency first hiring process. Usually what this means is you have something that you've done it this way for a really long time, and you probably have really good reasons for the way that you do it, and you don't realize it's become an agency first hiring process. In other words, it's more convenient for your agency. It helps you avoid wasted time. We hear that one a lot. Like, well, it's a waste of time to have them come to the interview if they don't blank, blank, blank. You know, that makes sense. Like, it makes sense. I get it. It's a good thing. The problem is a lot of times agencies are offloading the risk from themselves to the caregivers. Because if you, for example, schedule an interview and you don't require the documentation to be submitted ahead of the interview, so their driver's license or their TB test or whatever it is, and you say, you can send it to me ahead of time, but if not, still come in from the interview, that is fine. Then you are taking a risk because you might have a caregiver come in and interview, you might invest your time in them, and they might not turn in their documents. So to avoid that, many agencies will say instead they have to submit their documents ahead of the interview because otherwise it's a waste of time. But what you've actually done is taken the wasted time risk and moved it from yourself to the caregiver, because now they're submitting documents for an agency that they don't know if they're going to get offered a job. They don't know if you have the shifts they need. They don't know exactly what their starting pay is going to be. So now you're asking them to risk wasted time so that you don't have to. And when we come back to whose responsibility is it to get them to work at your agency, it's not their responsibility, it's your responsibility. So you should be the one risking the wasted time. So let's go through this. Let's talk about, is your agency currently caregiver first? Okay, because this is not very hard to fix, but you have to be so intentional about it. In other words, it's not going to fix itself. Okay, so let's go through this checklist with me. I want you to think about your pay and hiring timeline. Hopefully you guys have your workbook open. If not, you can just basically follow along with the slide. It has a lot of the same information for this one. Does your job ads clearly list the pay and hiring timeline? Now, why these things specifically? All of these are data-based. This is not just pulling out of my head of good ideas, though I do have many good ideas in there. This is the data of what makes caregivers choose a particular job when they're looking at home care agencies. It's the pay and it's how quickly they can get working. So you want to have that at the beginning of your job ads. If you're not sure, go look at your job ads and think about this, because like I said, this is a workshop. Pull up your Indeed account if you're not sure. What's listed at the very top of your ad? Is it, this is how much we pay, this is how much we can get you working, or how quickly we can get you working, these are the kind of shifts we have? Or is it something like Bob and Karen started this agency 20 years ago because of this experience and they love this community and they've earned all these awards? Those are great things. That is great information, but it should not be at the top of the job ad, because most caregivers are going to be doing this on their mobile phone and they're moving very quickly, and they open your ad and you want them to immediately see, I can meet your needs. That shows value for their time, and it also shows that you understand their needs. You understand that they're looking for a certain pay and that they need to get working quickly. And we're not judging this, right? This is not a value statement or a moral question. It's just they're looking for a job to meet their needs. I'm going to put that at the top of the ad. So on your caregiver first checklist, I want you to honestly ask, do they immediately know that you're going to meet their needs? Is that first in your job ad? And the next thing is your starting pay. So I highly encourage you to list your actual starting pay, because some of the pitfalls we see here are vague statements. That is agency first mindset. If you are not comfortable listing your starting pay, maybe you don't pay enough. And it feels like a great idea. This is another one of those kind of emotionally driven things that feels like we're gonna, put the statement like great pay, competitive wages, best pay, and we'll get more applicants. But if you get more applicants and your pay is not what they're looking for, they're probably not going to actually work for you, or at least not for long. So what happens is you get on the phone with them to do a phone screen, and they may ask, what's your pay? And then you tell them. Now they might still book an interview. Some of them might say, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Thank you. A lot of them are going to feel uncomfortable because many people do. Many people don't have the confidence to say, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And kind of for good reason, because a lot of caregivers do get judged if they're on a phone screen and say, no, that's not what I'm looking for. People tend to think, well, they're just in it for the pay. Well, again, we're not judging. They're in it to pay their bills, right? It's a job. So it's okay for them to have certain pay standards. But if you're not listing your starting pay, they get partway into the process and it doesn't meet their needs. They might move forward in the process because they're too uncomfortable to say that. So they might schedule that interview. If they don't have another job lined up, they might even show up for that interview and start the hiring process. But are they going to stick around in the long term if the pay that you offer is not what they need? Probably not. So although it feels nice to get more applicants, please list your starting pay in your job ads. So that's the next thing on our checklist that I hope you guys have open. Next one is your job benefits are listed first. So again, in the ordering of your ad, we want your pay and hiring timeline and the job benefits at the top. We want agency history lower down if it's in the job ad at all. If it is, it should be very concise and written towards the caregiver. We want job duties and requirements near the bottom because we want people to see first, this is a job that meets my needs. I'm going to make enough pay. I can get working quickly. This is a good place to work. Let me see if I'm qualified. Versus opening something up and there's a long list. And so many of these, you guys, are copy pasted. Somebody has a list of 20 job duties and requirements that they wrote one time and they just pop it into every job ad. I want you to think about, does this entire list need to be there? And if it does, put it near the end of your ad. It does not need to be at the top. Last, is it easy to apply an interview? So this one is harder because the other ones are your job ad. This one is your whole hiring process. So a caregiver first hiring process moves very quickly. Every step is clearly defined and there are very little barriers to them moving forward. We're going to take as many barriers as we can out. So like I mentioned before, documents before an interview. It saves you time to not interview people who don't have their documents. But many agencies find that if they will make it optional to submit before the interview, the wasted time is more than made up for by how many more caregivers they're able to hire just by removing that requirement. You can still have it be preferred, and that's great. But a caregiver first process makes it easy for the caregiver because we're prioritizing their needs and their experience. An agency first process is going to have a lot of tedious steps. You have to fill out this application. Now I need you to go fill out that paperwork. Now I need you to submit this document. Now I need you to do this online training. And then if you do all of these things, we'll hire you. And you're asking the caregiver to put an awful lot of faith in you with their precious time when they don't even know you yet, right? Last one is open scheduling. So you want to work your schedule around the caregivers. Now, this doesn't have to take your whole day. I know it can be really frustrating to sit around for people who might not show up. You can do this in some really creative ways, and I would love to dig into that with you another day. But the question is, are you working around the caregiver schedule or your schedule? Things like orientation. Orientation is time consuming. It takes a lot of work. It probably involves multiple people in your office. But if you're only offering it 1 day per week, that means anybody that applies that day or the next day is going to have almost a week wait before the next orientation. Now that is okay as long as you're providing a great opportunity for them to work. And by that, I mean good shifts available and good pay. So you can kind of be one thing or the other, but you can't be both. So you cannot be at or below the normal or average pay for your area and have a very tedious process. If you want to have a very tedious process and you want to only interview the very, very best and only schedule them for the interview if you have all their documents, like you can do that if you want, but you need to pay really well because otherwise caregivers aren't going to be willing to go through all of those steps. All right. Really quick, let's talk through writing a good job ad. But before we do, jump in the chat and tell me on that checklist, did you get an A+? Did you maybe get a B? Anybody want to say they got a D? You don't have to. But did anybody go through that checklist and can honestly say A+ for your agency? Softly quiet in the chat. Jessica said no, not an A+. We can work on that, Jessica. We can work on it. Anybody else want to jump in of how you feel you did? Haley said she was not an A when she first started writing job ads. So many of us have been there, Haley. We all started that way. Melissa said A to B. That's decent. That's decent. That is good. I'm proud of you for that. All right, so a couple things with a job ad. We want to start strong. So we've talked about starting really strong. Emily, just so you know, I just saw a chat come through and you have your chat set to go to host and panelist. So I saw it, but nobody else will. You want to start strong on your job ad. And we're talking here about all the things we've been saying, speaking to the caregiver's needs, high pay. But what I love is what I call attention grabbers. So at the very top of a job ad, I put a couple quick statements in bold and they're not full sentences. So I might say, pays $18 an hour, working as soon as next week, great career path or something like that. But I'm just going to go boom, 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 really quick. On that same note, keep your job ads readable. We do not need long paragraphs, long sentences. They're on their mobile phones most of the time. And then last, speaking to the caregiver's needs, again, make that database. So we don't just need to guess. There's a lot of great data out there about what caregivers are looking for. You can also just ask your new hires and ask people who have been with you a long time. Ask your caregivers, why did you choose this job? Why do you love to work here? Why do you stay? And put those things in your job ad. And then for evaluating your job ads, you're going to want to evaluate them at least once a month. We don't want to put up a new job ad and look at it a week later and decide whether or not it's working. You really want to look at it over the course of about a month to decide if it's effective or not. But you don't want to set it and forget it. Just post your job ads and keep going. You also don't want to just copy and paste the same job ad every time. I'm going to call some of you guys out because I know you're doing it. Don't do that. Write some specific job ads that talk to potential caregivers. Imagine in your head or write down, what caregiver are you writing this job ad for? Think about your best caregivers and the qualities that they share, and imagine you're writing directly to them instead of just copying and pasting the same ad. To evaluate your job ads, you want to review your cost per applicant and your cost per hire. So this is the first step in your hiring pipeline, is your cost per applicant. So if you're tracking all of your ads, you can quickly see which ones are performing better and which ones are not. But you still need to look at your cost per hire to know, is this actually getting us results? Because getting applicants doesn't mean anything if they don't actually get hired. So you want to track that through to the cost per hire if you can. And then once a month, shift your job budget around. So if you're running something like an Indeed account and you have different ads running with a large budget distributed among them, it's going to vary over time where your budget should be allocated. I typically don't recommend an even split of your budget unless you are just now posting the ads. But once they've been running for a while, many agencies will find that different job ads perform better. So you shift your budgets to the higher performing ads, with the exception of ads that maybe you have an area that's really expensive, but you need caregivers in that area. You would want to keep your budget there. So this is really a monthly discussion to sit down, look at your job ads, look at your budget, and decide how to move that money around. All right. That is the basics of recruiting. So caregiver first philosophy, really prioritizing the caregiver's needs at every step. Now, we're not going to walk through this whole checklist today, but the next part of your workbook is an ad audit. So it's really designed for you to sit down and look through your current job ads. This is at the end. This is on page, well, not quite the end, but page 5, how to maximize your results. This is a lot of what we just talked about, and I want you to do this sometime this week. Sit down, go through point by point, and see if you're currently doing this with your online ads. But right now we're going to talk about scalable hiring. I'm so excited. This is where I get really, really pumped because this is all about your funnel and your KPIs. And this is like the heartbeat of home care hiring to have a scalable process. So if you guys are in the doldrums, I don't know where you are. Where I am, it's 1:30 in the afternoon. So I just had a big lunch. I'm a little sleepy, but we're going to shake it off. Shake it off. This is exciting stuff. And this absolutely makes the difference for your agency. Let's talk about your hiring funnel. Okay. This is a basic hiring funnel. I love that it's kind of rainbow, so fun. But we start with our applicants. Then they book an interview. Then the interview is successful, hopefully. They get hired and they start working. Each of these steps has time associated with it. It takes time to go from an application to a booked interview. A couple days after that until they're actually successfully interviewed. Then they got to get hired. Then they got to start working. So this would be your time from application to first shift, which is a great KPI to track. Now let's think if you go, wait a minute, after they do the phone screen, instead of just booking the interviews, I want them to do a second application. So maybe they applied through an online job ad. Now I want them to go fill out your operation software might have a really long application. I want them to go fill that out and then I'll book their interview. Then we'll move through the process. But wait, after they do their interview, they can book the interview, but I don't want them coming in unless they've submitted their documents. So they need to get all of that to me. Then we can do an interview and have it be successful. But before I hire them, I really need to talk to their references. Now they're hired, now they're working. None of those things were horrible. Like none of these were like they have to go out and run a 26-mile marathon in 2 hours. These are good things. These are reasonable steps. Every single one of these steps makes sense on paper. But here is the end result. We have the funnel on the left. We have the funnel on the right. And I want you to think to yourself as you look at these, do you fall more with that short funnel on the left or more with the long funnel on the right? All good things, but it's made your funnel a lot longer. Now, like I said, we do this with no judgment. So what we are not saying here is they're not a good hire. They're not a good hire if they're not willing to do these steps. I don't want them working for my agency if they can't take the time to fill out an application or if they can't wait a day or two for a phone call. We're not going to judge. We're going to think about it from the caregiver's perspective. Again, they need to get working quickly to fulfill their real responsibilities in life, which is to provide for themselves, maybe their family, keep a roof over their head. So let's think about that caregiver who needs to get working quickly to get a paycheck. Maybe they just lost their job. Maybe the job that they have, they're not getting enough hours and they're going to miss rent. And they get a call from one job that's like, this is so great. I can't wait to meet with you. You can come into the office day after tomorrow and we'll have you working by the beginning of next week. And then they get a call from another agency that says, so great to speak with you. We're really excited to work with you. Before we can do your interview, I need you to send me all of this paperwork. And then if that goes well, we'll go ahead and schedule your interview. Where is that caregiver going to go? And would you not also go to the job with the shorter funnel, given that these are not high-level jobs? Like these are not salaried positions where you're going to do a couple interviews and you're really going to think about culture because you're going to be there for years and years. I love that heart. And that is what a lot of agencies are bringing to the hiring process, is really wanting the right fit. But you cannot use that as an excuse to ask caregivers to jump through a bunch of hoops, because they won't do it. Not because they're not the right fit, not because they don't want to stick around, but because they have to get working quickly. They have responsibilities. So we want to optimize this funnel for a couple of the specific things I mentioned. Here are some quick strategies to streamline it. If you require an application other than their initial online application, so maybe it's for your operating software, payroll, have them do it at the interview. Just schedule in an extra 10 to 15 minutes, have a computer available for them and somebody there to answer any questions that they have. You can still send it to them ahead of time. You can send them the link and say, if you go ahead and get this filled out, it's going to put you right in our payroll system and we can get you working faster. But if not, still come on into the interview. We'll do it together. So we are still on the phone screen scheduling the next step, and we're having them come in even if they haven't filled it out. And the next one is submitting documents. Please make this optional and easy before the interview or before orientation. I know that they're important. I know that you don't want people coming in and wasting your time. but please don't let that lead to a canceled interview, because for every person who schedules an interview, there's 3 to 4 other people that never even scheduled it. So think about your costs. Just getting somebody to schedule an interview is expensive in time and your job ad budget, and try everything you can to actually make that successful. Again, like the application, you can give them a way to do it ahead of time, but definitely communicate to them that if they don't have the documents in, that's fine. Please still come in. We can't wait to meet with you. We'll work on it together. Last one is checking references. Do not withhold a job offer because you need to check references. Just go ahead and give them the job offer and start moving them forward. If you need to kill a little time in there, offer some paid training. You may find if you study your ROI for a while that you get a better cost per hire by streamlining your funnel that outweighs the additional cost of paid training and gets you more hires faster. So that is my recommendation. All right, we've started with funnels. Drop in the chat and tell me, how is your funnel? Is it a short funnel or maybe needs some work? Anybody want to fess up? Short funnel, Rebecca. Awesome. Melissa as well. Short funnel. Love that. Short and easy, you said. That's great. That is what we want to see. We want to keep it moving as quickly as possible. Jessica said short as well. Love that. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about data-based strategies. This is the heart behind everything that CareWork does, is the data. And here are some reasons. So they take you off the emotional roller coaster. If you've been in home care hiring for a while, you might be a little jaded. You might be a little burnt out. And you might get to a point where somebody leading or owning the agency, you're sitting down and you're like, we have to hire more people. We're not keeping up. And it gets really stressful, understandably, totally understandable. But what you don't want is to be sitting around with your team and everybody saying, well, I think it's this, or I think it's that. And I did my best. And somebody saying, well, you did your best, but we didn't get enough hires. We want to take that out of it. We want it to be data-based. Hey, our percentage of applicants that booked an interview is down 5%. Here's why we think that is. So it takes you off that emotional roller coaster. And as a business owner or leader, it allows you to forecast, which also takes you off the emotional roller coaster, because you're not sitting on the edge of your seat, like hoping and praying you're going to get the hires. You can forecast that out very easily. And they are also the foundation of collaboration. So like I said, we don't want to be sitting around pointing fingers. We want everybody to come to the table with clear data so that we can make a clear path forward. Your data also provides insight into changes over time. So when you're looking at it and saying, last year we were doing way better, this year we're not even keeping up with turnover. Why is that? Because the short answer is to say there's a caregiver shortage, people aren't picking up the phone, people aren't showing up. But that is not a solvable problem. If you are putting it out there as external forces, you're taking away your own power to solve it. When you look at the data, you can look very clearly and say, hey, last year we were getting 25% more applicants. We had a higher percentage of people booking an interview and our show up rate was higher. Now we can individually solve each one of those problems. And now you control the growth of your agency. These database strategies also show progress objectively for the same reason. So it's really encouraging when you can say, our applicants are down, but our percentage of applicants booking an interview is up, and that's great progress. So now we know if we get more applicants, we're going to get more hires because we've improved our process. Objective progress, love it. Last, it keeps you from throwing money at a broken system. Now, I'm pretty sure nobody on this call today is like, but I love throwing money at a broken system. Like, just throw the money out there. Nobody is thinking that way, but a lot of agencies are doing that. So I do strategy calls all the time with home care agencies, and every now and then I get somebody that's like, yeah, we're spending $5,000 a month on job ads. We're getting like 2 hires. That is throwing money at a broken system. It's also throwing money at a broken system if you're just adding more and more money to your online job ads and you don't know why you're not getting hires. You don't know your KPIs. You don't know if they're improving or getting worse. So sometimes people increase their ad budget, but they don't get more hires, or they don't get a proportional amount of new hires because something in their funnel is not scalable. So they might get more applicants, they might spend more money, but their process isn't scaling. And so they might spend twice as much, but only get 20% more hires. That's what we want to avoid by having the data. Has anybody ever had months like that, that you just threw money at your job ads and you didn't really see anything from it? You can drop in the chat and say, that's me. That's me. It's happened. I've seen it a lot, and I've seen it with agencies all over the US. Yes, it's the worst, isn't it? It is not fun. So annoying, Adrian. I agree. I see this all the time. And typically what's happening is people are really determined to hire and they don't know why they're not meeting their goals right now. And if you don't have the data, it's very hard to say. Is it that people aren't applying? Do you just need more applicants? Well, when you know your funnel and you know if your funnel is converting well, then you know if you're ready to increase the ad budget. But sometimes I talk with people and I say, based on your current results, you don't need more applicants. You need to get better at converting your applicants to hires. And that's what we want to help you determine with this data. All right, quick example. So this is, I love this little thing with the Scotch paper looking stuff. You know, it's like a little homework. We're going to talk about why home care agencies should make data-based recruiting decisions. Because the thing is, every agency needs more caregivers. I have only in 5 years talked to maybe 3 agencies that were like, oh no, I'm getting plenty of hires every single month. And I love that for them, but very, very uncommon. Everybody needs more caregivers, but not everybody needs the same strategies. And what happens is you get webinars and conferences and things where people come together and they're like, just tell me how to get more hires. And they'll talk to another agency, and the other agency owner is like, oh, I did this and now I got more hires. And you're like, that is great. I'm going to go do that. And it might work for them, but it might not, because they have a totally different market. So here's an example. We have these 2 agencies, very creatively named Agency 1 and Agency 2. They are both getting 5 hires per month. So here are 3 strategies, and we're going to decide what strategy they should try. Strategy number 1, should they try a new or better interview show up bonus / perk? Strategy 2, should they stop requiring the application before scheduling the interview? Or strategy 3, should they stop requiring documents to be submitted before orientation? I want you to jump in the chat and say if you know what agency 1 should try, what agency 2 should try, or you can maybe say, I see where you're going with this. You need more information. Anybody? I'll go ahead and give you guys the more information if you want to see it. More information. I'm going to tell you guys right now, the percentages going from top to bottom don't add up. I am good at math, but you know, sometimes you're just trying to make a point. Sue, I see you said 2, and 2 is a great strategy. It really is. So let's see which one is right for each agency. All right, now we have Agency 1 and Agency 2, their percentage of applicants to book an interview, the percentage of interviews that are successful, the percentage of applicants that are hired, and their overall hires per month. So if you just look at percentage of applicants hired, both agencies are getting 9.2. So they're right there with, now we have a national average. They're performing right along the national average, but they want to improve. So Agency 1 is getting 8% of their applicants to book an interview, and 42% of their interviews are successful. Agency 2 is getting 32% of their applicants to book an interview, and 10% of their interviews are successful. That's what we're focusing on. I don't know why our graph just went nuts, but now I want you guys to look at it and guess, should Agency 1 try strategy 1, which is a new or better interview show up bonus or perk? Strategy 2, which is to stop requiring the application before scheduling the interview? Or strategy 3, which is to stop requiring documents to be submitted before orientation? So for Agency 1, what do we think that they should try? Go ahead and drop it in the chat. Jessica said 2. Sue, I had said 2. Melissa says 2. Lindsay says 1. Lintha says 2. All right, so what about agency number 2? What should they be trying? What do we think here for agency 2? We have a vote for 3 from Lindsay. 3. Anybody else for agency 2? All right, 3 would really help most if caregivers were not showing up for orientation. Here's our top strategies that we would recommend. Now, all of these strategies are good things. So if you're looking for 3 things to implement, you could implement all of these. But we find most agencies are limited in the amount of strategies that they can try right now, just from bandwidth, tolerance to change, budget. So here's what we would recommend. Agency 1 should stop requiring the application before booking the interview, because what's happening is they're getting a lot of applicants that don't book an interview because they have to try and get this application done. They don't ever get it done. Now, agency 1 might have thought that that was working well. And they might even say things like, well, once we get people to book an interview, we do great. It's just a lot of people don't fill out the application. They're not a great hire. But then when we show them, well, the average agency is getting close to 30% of their applicants to book an interview. Now that has meaning. Now they know their data and they have context. Agency 2, we're going to say strategy 1. They need a better interview show up bonus or perk because their interview show up rate, their interview successful rate is really low compared to the national average. Again, the reason we can zero in on this strategy is we know their data and we have a national average to go with that. This is like a ton of what we do at CareWork with our agencies is here's your data, here's what we know is normal, here's what we're going to recommend. So here are some basic conversions to track. Now, I train people on this all the time. I'm going to try and keep this brief because I really could talk about it forever. But we're going to go from the number of applicants that you get with your cost per applicant to how many book interviews, how many of those are successful interviews, and how many hires you get. And then you can work backwards to determine your cost per hire. This gives you a basic view of your recruiting funnel. And if you track this every week, which is what we recommend, you can see these changes over time. You can make immediate adjustments before it impacts your hiring results. You can also forecast your future results. So how many applicants do you need? People ask me this all the time, like I'm getting 100 applicants, I'm getting 200 applicants, I'm getting 50 applicants. What's good? Well, it totally depends on your process, but here is the basic math. Now, this also is in your workbook. We have a workbook page that is dedicated to your funnel conversion. So you can do all of this math, including your applicant goal is on there. You're going to take your number of applicants, divide it by the number of hires, and then multiply it by your number of desired hires. So let's say you got 10 hires, or you want 10 hires a month. Last month, you got 50 applicants and you made 3 hires. We're going to do 50 divided by 3 times 10 and come to a total number that you need 167 applicants needed. Now, what do you do with this? Well, how much should you be spending on ads? You take that number of applicants needed and multiply it by your current cost per applicant. So I get asked this all the time. What should I be spending on Indeed? What should I be spending on my job ads? This is the answer. And now if you do this and you come up with a huge number, you're like, well, I cannot spend that much. You have a broken funnel or you have a really high cost per applicant. It's probably one of those two things. It may be that you have unrealistic expectations, but most of the time it's either your funnel is broken, so you're coming up with a really high number of applicants needed because you're not converting enough applicants. If you go back to this slide, how many applicants is it taking you to get a hire? You can lower that by optimizing your funnel and studying these numbers, by getting more applicants to book an interview, more booked interviews to show up, more successful interviews to actually start work, step by step by step. Then you need fewer applicants to reach your goals. Then you have a good ad budget that is sustainable and scalable. That is the secret. It's not the only secret, but that really is what we do over and over and over again with people is these are math problems. This is not big, scary strategy. These are math problems. And then once you have that data, then it's so easy to make a step-by-step plan. If you know the data and you know what the data means, you can make a step-by-step plan and actually succeed, which is what we want to see. Here's the secret. Your market is your market. So what worked for somebody in another agency may not work for you. And this is why I always say our training programs for recruiters are not teach a man to fish programs. They are not give a man a fish program, they're teach a man to fish. Because what we see some agencies want is they want, give me a step-by-step of if I do this, this, and this, I'll succeed. But that will only get you so far. I could tell you right now, here's exactly what CareWork does. Here's what we say on our phone screens. And that is powerful information. But if you don't know how to take that and adapt that over time, it's going to do nothing for you. What you need is everybody on your team to understand the KPIs and understand what they mean and have a regular rhythm for looking at them, so that then you come together and say, this KPI is down. Here's what we know that means, and here's how we're going to fix it, so that then you have a scalable process. Because the other thing is, this is going to change through the years. This is not something that you can just do one time and be done. You have to, at a very foundational level and deep level, understand this so that you can use it every month and every year to continue growing. And last, I want to encourage you, don't make rash decisions. Use your data. And if you're not sure about a new strategy, do a test. Say, we're going to try for the next 30 days, not requiring this application. And we're going to see if that improves our overall conversion enough to make it worth it. You can do literally a scientific test, but it's only helpful if you already have the data and you really want to build long-term data. So for us, we can go look at year over year over year over year with all of our clients and say, oh, you know what? July is always a really high volume month, or January and February, we see a spike, or whatever it is. You want to build that data for your own agency so that if you have a month where it all starts to get more challenging, you can look back to future or to past years and say, oh, you know what it is? Every year in this month, it's more challenging because of back to school or the holidays or summer or whatever it is. And then you can also see if you have a stagnant month and you look back and go, well, not only is this concerning because this month is slow, but it's concerning because this month is typically a high month for us, which is putting us behind for the year. That is the context and power of your data. I told you guys, I get so excited about this. I'm going to calm down. We're going to talk about retention, also important, but I love this information. So I want to know really quick in the chat, how many of you are already tracking this kind of data and you can honestly say you're tracking it consistently and using it responsibly? If you are, say data-based. Data-based. We are a data-based agency. Jessica said, yes, I know that that is true, you guys, because I talked to Jessica earlier today and she was like, let me start by telling you in the month of July, how many applicants we get, how many booked an interview, how many showed up. So powerful. Lindsay, yes. Melissa, I love it, you guys. Database, that's what we want to see. You have to be tracking this regularly and doing something with it. And I am so happy to hear that we are already aligned on what is important. And database monthly, also good. That is a really good start. I love weekly data, but monthly is still really powerful, and that is what we want to see. The advantage of weekly is that you can see halfway through the month, like, are we on track? Are we not on track? Are we trending up? Are we trending down? And you can make adjustments before it really impacts your results. All right, I'm so glad you guys are on team data. Let's talk about cost-effective, scalable growth and retention. So 3 main concepts here for having a scalable recruiting and retention process. You need to understand your caregiver value. Now, in this instance, I'm not talking about the emotional value because obviously they are very valuable as people, no matter how much they work or what your margins are. But I am talking about on a financial level, the value of each hire that you make. So to know this, you need to know your average retention. You need to know on average how many hours your hires work and what your margins per hour are. This gives you a great way to improve that over time. So you know, if we could get everybody to work a little bit more and stick around a little bit longer, we're going to start really getting ahead financially versus the constant turnover or underutilizing the roster that you currently have. The next one is to set your agency growth goals. So how many caregivers do you need to hire based on your current growth goals, your average hours worked per hire, and I don't know why this sentence is missing, but plus accounting for turnover. So you cannot effectively grow your agency if you don't know at a basic level how many caregivers you need to hire. And a pitfall I see a lot is people will say like, I'll hire as many caregivers as I can. That is wonderful. I love that energy, but you can't do that if you're not building in a structure for it. And it's much easier to build a structure if you set regular goals that increase over time versus just saying we want as many as we can get. Because if you do that, it's not a real goal. It's just like a dream. It's like, it'd be great. We'll hire as many caregivers as we can. The growth market is unlimited. That's probably true. Your growth, if you can hire caregivers, the need is there, right? But if you're not setting specific goals based on how much you want to grow your agency, what, how many hours you want to be working, and then how many caregivers you need to hire to work those hours based on your average hours worked per hire and accounting for turnover, you're not giving your team anything you can really hold them accountable for, because everybody wants to hire a ton of caregivers, but you want to have a specific goal to say, remember, to meet our growth goals, we need to hire 11 caregivers per month. Right now we're halfway through the month. We've only hired 4. We're not on track. How are we going to scale that up the next 2 weeks? That's the power of database goals. And then you want to use your metrics as levers. So if you know you have a good cost per applicant and you have a good conversion to hire, so your funnel is working, then increase your ad budget. And then you can say, we want 11 hires per month and we know it's costing us this amount. Here we go. But you have to keep an eye on your metrics to make sure that they stay steady. Otherwise, it will not be scalable. So remember I said, sometimes people go spend a ton more on their online job ads, but they don't have the foundational structure and systems in place to be scalable. So you might have a step in the process or a hire or a staff person in your agency that is the bottleneck of making that growth scalable, which means even if you go spend $5,000 on your job ads, you're not going to get the hires you're looking for, because now you have a human being who can't call everybody fast enough. So now instead of calling everybody the first day, they're calling them within a few days. They might be falling behind. So you're not going to get as good a conversion. And now you're spending more, but you're not getting the proportional results. That is a not scalable process. We want to help you build a process that is scalable, that you understand what it takes to meet your goals, and you know how to hold your team accountable, and you're giving them the tools that they need to do that. This is really important for us. I mean, like I said, we've handled hundreds of thousands of applicants. So for me, managing a team of 40 recruiters, I have to know how our applicant volume is trending and how much time it should take my team, whether they're performing efficiently and whether they're getting results. I mean, I track this all the time, so I know you can do it. I know you can do it, and I would love to help you. Quick overview of retention metrics. These are basic, but what percentage of your caregivers are still working at 90 days, at 6 months, and a year? So kind of like we did with recruiting, these are your entry-level metrics. Now, to succeed at these metrics, you can break them down. For 90-day retention, who worked a first shift? Who was still working at 30 days, 45, 60 days? If they were still working, how many hours per week are they working? If they're not working, when did they stop and were they not getting enough hours? There's a lot of data to break down in each step, but this gives you a basic way to measure this. Now, I am assuming everybody on this call is measuring retention. Anybody want to jump in the chat and say yes? Like, yes, we are. We're measuring this because it's important. I'll wait. Go ahead. Lindsay said yes. Yes, yes. Haley's excited. I'm excited. Good, good. Yes, Jenny as well. Good. Everybody should be measuring retention. Yes, good, 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 good. Now I'm going to give you one that's more advanced. Are you measuring your retention by source? In other words, when you look at retention, can you break down your retention by where the caregiver came from? Were they a referral? Were they from Indeed? Were they from My CNA Jobs? Can you break down your retention and say, this is our retention for Indeed hires, this is our retention for My CNA Jobs, this is our retention for referrals? If so, keep saying yes. I say, Lindsay said yes. Rebecca said yes. I know, Haley, isn't it exciting? I'm excited. Anybody else tracking by source? Yes, Jessica said no, but she will. Love that energy, Jessica. All right. That's a harder one, but I'm glad to see you guys are doing it. Again, you guys are aligned here with care work. We want to know, are you tracking this data? Because if you are, we can help you scale your recruiting process. If you're not, that's the first thing we teach you is how to track this and why. So I'm really glad you guys are aligned with the importance of data because I have really advanced strategies for every single one of those data points. But it works best if you're already tracking the data. And so you have a baseline. And I'm sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. It's the kids back to school. They're giving me all the germs. All right, scalable retention. So now that we have a scalable hiring funnel and we know how many we need to hire based on retention, how do we scale retention? The mistake a lot of agencies make is they don't think of retention as a scalable system and process. They are leaving it up to people just being good about communicating, being good about doing it. It won't work. So how do you scale retention? You have to communicate often. When it comes to shifts, to growth, career paths, you have to communicate this to your new hires. And this is where a system comes into place. Like on week 1, we check in with them and we go through this list. On week 3, we ask them these questions. At week 6, we check in to see if they're meeting their hours. On week 8, we check in to see if their pay is working for them or if they need to increase or decrease. This is a system that makes it scalable. The next way is to continue to put caregivers first. Find out what your new hires needs and meet their needs. And then to make myself laugh, I put in parentheses and communicate that. I just said communication. But something really powerful that I got from Jensen Jones and Stephen Tweed at the Home Care CEO Forum is to just straight up ask your new hires what take-home pay they need. And then you do the math to know on average, this is how much is going to be taken out for taxes in our area. And so to account for that, you're going to need to work X amount of hours. And here's a shift where I can get you that amount of hours and you can meet your take-home pay needs. That is so powerful from day one. We understand your needs and we're going to meet them for you. That is caregiver first, right? Another way is to meet their needs when there are unexpected issues. So their child is homesick from school, even just asking, is there anything you need? Are you guys okay? So many people look at agencies calling out or caregivers calling out as just a problem. And I get it. It is a problem. I'm not saying it's not. But when you put the human element back in and you treat every caregiver like they're the best caregiver that's ever worked for you, and you assume the best and you put yourself out there and you make yourself vulnerable to connect with them and to offer them support, it is so powerful for retention when they are not just numbers. Now, do we need to know the numbers? Yes, but they should not feel like a number. And those are different things. On that same track, build future leaders. This is another issue with my slides, and I'm so sorry. The updated paragraph is missing there. But the point here is that building leaders within a home care agency is the same as building leaders in any other industry, in any other role. It is to give them a path forward, to show them the vision that you have for them to achieve and how you're going to help them achieve it, and then empower them to do that. Give them the training that they need, give them the support that they need. I talked with one agency owner who takes every single hire out to lunch when they hit 45 days to see what they need and how they're growing. Other agencies have done this with lead caregivers who go to the first shift with them and then check in with them again all throughout their first week. These are systems that you build a culture of leadership and you empower them. So that lead caregiver role is a great one to say, we have lead caregivers, they make more money, and this is how you become a lead caregiver. And if that is your goal, we're going to help you achieve that so that you can increase your earning potential. I've seen other agencies that give $1 an hour raise to caregivers once they have referred a certain number of new hires. So not only are you going to get a referral bonus when they're hired, but you're going to long-term earn more money because you are helping build our agency and you're going to become a leader within this agency. Those are all things that help retention. And then people get scared about the cost, and I get it. But if you are a private pay agency, you just have to learn to factor this in, to not build your pricing based off of just your average cost or the lower end of your cost, but to build in money for retention, for raises, for promotions, so that you can build a stronger agency and grow more in the long term, which then serves your community. Because are your prices higher? Yes, but they are getting better quality of care. Totally worth it. That's another soapbox I could get on. But quickly, we're going to talk about the downward spiral that many home care agencies are stuck in. Some of you may have seen me talk about this before if you've come to previous webinars. This is something I'm really, really passionate about explaining, because I just work with so many agencies that were in this spiral and are not anymore. And I want to help you get out of this spiral. So here's what happens. You have an agency that's understaffed. And then because they're understaffed, now they're turning away cases. Well, what happens if you turn away cases? You have lower revenue, lower profit. If you have lower revenue and lower profit, you can't invest as much in your ad budget and your recruiting pipeline and your recruiting staff. So then what happens is you don't have enough hires. If you don't have enough hires, you get more understaffed, and this downward spiral continues. This is a very, very frustrating place to be. And for leaders and owners of agencies, this can feel incredibly overwhelming, and it may even make you feel powerless or hopeless for the growth of your business. And you don't have to jump in the chat for this one, but I want you to think to yourself, are you in this spiral? Because when you're early in the spiral, what it feels like is, well, we're understaffed, but everybody is understaffed. You know, it's just the nature of the industry. If you're later in the spiral, you might be saying things like, we're having to let go of some stuff. It's getting harder. We need to lower our job budgets. It's really tight. We're really understaffed. We're turning away cases. And then I've heard people who have been in this spiral for a long time, and they're saying things like, I've laid off everyone in the office. I can't afford to outsource recruiting because I just literally can't afford it. I'm down over 50% from the same time last year. I had a great office manager that's been with me 5 years. I just had to let go. It is a horrible place to be. And I want you to know, I'm not a home care agency owner, but I am a business owner. And I deeply understand the emotions of how this impacts you as a leader of a business. And I want you to know it does not have to be like this. So here is what we're seeing from other agencies. And I promise this is possible for you. So I want everything I'm about to describe, I don't want you to hear that from a place of good for them, I wish that was me. I want you to hear it from a place of this is possible for me. There are agencies that are able to staff all of their cases. And because of that, now they're growing and they're able to take referrals. They're able to take all the cases they're offered. And they're able to go out into the community and say, hey, I'm taking referrals. I can staff whatever you have, right? So then what happens is they are now growing in revenue and growing in profit, which then means they're able to invest more in their ad budget and their recruiting pipeline and their referral incentives, retention bonuses, all of that, which means they get more consistent hires and they continue growing. This is happening for agencies. I work with agencies that this is happening for. And here is the secret. And this says secret number 5 is, do you switch into this upward spiral by investing time, effort, and money into your recruiting pipeline? So I want you to pause right here, because part of your brain just said, she's trying to sell me something. And of course I have things I can sell you to help with recruiting, but I want to be really clear that it doesn't have to be care work. It doesn't have to be me. There are so many ways you can invest in this pipeline. So that might look like you start meeting with your team once a week to review your weekly KPIs. It might mean you sit down and define your recruiting process better. It might mean that you as an owner do recruiting yourself for a day to feel the process. I still do this sometimes. I'll jump in and do the recruiting job for a while, because sometimes there are inefficiencies or parts that are not great that you don't realize until you do it again yourself for a while. It might mean the effort of having difficult conversations with your team to say, I don't think we're hiring with a caregiver first mindset, and we need to change that. Or I don't think the culture at our agency is caregiver first. I think we've gotten really down on caregivers and judgmental towards them, and we need to change that. It might be money in job ads. It might be money in training for your team or in outsourcing. But the point here is there are so many ways to do this, but they all come back to this point in this cycle that switches you from over here where it's going down to over here where it's going up. And it is possible for your team. It is possible, I promise. It doesn't happen overnight, because just like that downward cycle happens over a long time, this one can take a long time too. But when you change the trajectory and you go from very, very slowly moving down, or very fast moving down sometimes, to now we're slowly moving up, it builds momentum over time, because you get bigger and you have more staff and you have more money and you have more time and you have more freedom, and it snowballs up. And that's what we want to see. Recruiting at the end of the day is a funnel. When you measure the conversion percentages at every step and make incremental improvements, you can completely change the outcome. So if you are ready to do that, to hire, thrive, and grow, I do have great news for you. And I would love to tell you about the Hire to Thrive Accelerator. This is a program we are launching in the middle of next month to officially begin classes, but it is available to you right now. It is a 12-week long program where I will work directly with you and your recruiting team to help build the kind of scalable recruiting process that we've been talking about. Now, to be clear, this program is not for every agency. You have to be ready to invest time and money in your hiring process. And again, that's not just with me, but you do have to be willing to do this training and to put it into practice. You have to be dedicated to agency growth to support this, to say, yes, we are ready to thrive, we are ready to grow, and we're going to do what it takes to get there, because otherwise this is a waste of time, right? And I don't want anybody to waste their time with me. You have to be open to trying new things. So we are going to challenge you. We are going to dig deep into your hiring process and your onboarding process, and we're going to ask the hard questions, which means it's not always going to be super comfortable. We're always going to be respectful, but it's not always going to be super comfortable, because we're not going to tell you what you want to hear. We're going to tell you the truth. And so you have to be open to that, that yes, we want honest feedback. We want to know the hard truth. And then you do with that what you will, but just know we're going to come to you with the data and give you real answers. And we're going to hold you accountable to actually putting it into place. And then the last is committed to putting the caregiver's needs first. The caregiver first philosophy is such a big deal at CareWork that I just don't work anymore with agencies that don't share it. So if your mindset of your agency is really down on caregivers, you want to, put them down, say that they just don't want to work anymore, everybody's just on unemployment, they'll just go to the first job that hires them, and you want to say those in a judgmental way, then this probably isn't the program for you. We're going to put caregivers first. We're going to discuss them with respect, and we are going to address these issues that you see as problems that can be solved with mutual respect. So that is very important if you're interested in the accelerator. And this is what all it includes. You're going to have individual and group coaching. So for 8 weeks, you're going to meet with me every week. We're going to go through live training like what we did today, but much more in depth on every step of the hiring process. And then you're going to have weekly small group training with a small group of other students to really implement this. That is your implementation session, because none of the training in the world means anything if you don't actually put it into place. So after you do a weekly live session with me, I'm going to give you a ton of ideas, data, strategies, and then you're going to meet in a small group to say, are you actually doing it? Because we give you homework. We say, go do this, go look at your phone screen script, go check for that, go get this data. And then we want to meet you in that implementation setting and say, but are you actually doing it, right? You get a digital workbook. So this is going to help you stay on track. This does include an owner's guide, which is a question I've gotten a lot. I have to tell you guys, we did put out the word with one email last week, and we've already filled several seats. And this is one of the questions I've gotten multiple times. What about for owners? Because if you want to put your recruiter through it, your recruiter can do the bulk of the training, but you as an owner or a manager may want this guide. We will have it for you. What should your recruiter be learning? How do you know if they're actually putting the training into place? So this isn't going to include sample templates, detailed equations like what we did today, step-by-step instructions, and it's going to really feel like your team went to college for home care hiring, because there's going to be homework, there's going to be assessments, there's going to be small group projects, all of it. And of course, every week we start with the live weekly training with me, where we're going to go through all of that data. So that live weekly training is for 8 weeks. The small group implementation is a total of 12 weeks. The first 8 weeks you're doing both, so 2 to 3 hours per week is the time you're looking at. And then the last 4 weeks is just the implementation, so about an hour a week at that point. I have done this program before in a shorter format, and it was very, very well received. And in fact, this is what somebody said: the weekly action items, particularly the metric worksheets, were a game changer for our company. Tracking these numbers has illuminated the areas we are succeeding and the areas that need our focus and attention. As a result, our team is working cooperatively and strategically. I would highly recommend this course. Here's somebody else that said 5 stars, great value and high ROI, great customer service, expert advice, valuable action items and implementation. So this is when our course was 4 weeks. We have since more than doubled the course content to dig more in and provided more implementation support. They found the action items were really easy to follow to actually implement the changes, and that our system was organized in a really easy to understand way. So great reviews. Now I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. I do have over here on the right the code to reserve your seat, and I have that there because for anybody that goes ahead and signs up while we are on this call, as in right now, I will do additional one-on-one coaching with you and your team, just with me and you, to really go through a couple more sessions in even greater depth, but you have to sign up while we are here. So that QR code takes you over there, and we do have a code of webinar 10 to receive a 10% off of the registration. And that code is only good this week. So I have that link up there. If you want to get those additional bonus sessions with me personally, I do recommend that you sign up literally right now. I'll be here for about 15 more minutes. It does not take long to sign up. Don't forget to use the code webinar10. In the meantime, does anybody have any questions about either the program, or do you just want to dive into some of the content that we covered today? What questions do you guys have about actually implementing the information we went over today? You can ask in the chat, or you can ask in the Q&A. I am so excited for this program. I have to tell you guys, we've already filled many of our seats just from sending out an email, and it's so exciting. I've been getting asked for years by people to train their recruiting teams for them, so I love when we run these programs. Melissa said, such useful information. This was great. I'm so glad you found it useful, Melissa. If you have any additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and send my email in the chat as well. If you guys have additional questions about the program, you can also set up a 15-minute consultation with me just to make sure that it's the right fit for you. Thank you, Haley. Haley just dropped the link for that. So if you want to sign up this week and get some of this information about the program, you can either sign up right now to get those additional bonus sessions, or you can set up a meeting. Jenny, I'm so glad that this was helpful for you. Danielle, yes, you will get a recording of this entire session emailed to you. Jessica asked the price of the program. It is priced at $29.97 for all 12 weeks for the workbook, for all of it. But that, like I said, we have the webinar 10 code that is good just this week to get you 10% off. Thank you guys so much for being on here today. It has been so fun. I love that you guys were active in the chat. That makes everything more fun when you guys are engaged and participating. I would also like to thank my voice for waiting until now to truly start breathing. So really good job there, voice. Does anybody have any other questions? Everybody out there filling out the sign up form, I bet. Getting those additional bonus coaching sessions for signing up right now. Let's see. Yes, I've gotten some questions already, and I see somebody else asked about getting a recording. You will get a recording of this session as well. Thank you, Danielle, so much for being on today. Thank you, Rebecca, Jenny, Melissa, Lindsay, everybody who is active in the chat. It has been so much fun all being together. If you guys don't have any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar in just a minute. But don't worry, if you're over filling out the sign up form right now, you will get the bonus coaching sessions as long as it is filled out by 2:30 today is technically when the webinar ends. So you have 12 minutes, 2:30 my time. Melissa, yes, you guys will all receive the recording. Absolutely. I agree with Haley. I loved the energy and engagement today. It has been so fun. I'm a big fan of the chat, if you guys can't tell. I always want people to do the workbook, jump in the chat, ask the questions, tell us how we're feeling. It was so cool today to see how many of you guys are already practicing database strategies. You are the perfect fit to do training with CareWork because we're going to help you take that data to the next level. But having already been tracking the data makes it so much more powerful because you have your baseline, which is incredibly helpful. Danielle, I'm going to send you that workbook one more time right here. So you can download that and do that again later. And again, you guys, you can go reserve your seat for the program right now for the accelerator. If you have any questions, you can also just book a 15-minute call with me for a personal consultation. Haley, would you drop that link one more time? Thank you. So if you have any questions about the accelerator and how we can help your agency scale, let me know. All right, if there are no other questions, we're going to go ahead and end the webinar for today. Thank you guys so much for joining. Please let me know if you think of any other questions later. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.